Accelerating Everything Towards 2040. I'm Tonya Hall, and joining me is Dr. Kathryn Bouskill, anthropologist at the RAND Corporation and associate director at the RAND Center for Global Risk and Security. Welcome, Dr. Bouskill.
Thank you, Tonya. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Tell us about your work at the RAND Center and summarize the journey that brought you there.
Oh, sure. I'd love to. So I have a degree in anthropology, a PhD in anthropology, and a master's in public health. And so much of my work has been at this sort of nexus of thinking through population dynamics and health, technology, and mental health and well-being. And as I sort of progressed through my PhD program, I kept really wanting to think through these complex problems that our world is facing through an interdisciplinary lens. And I wanted to be able to do really rigorous, objective, applied research. And I think the key word there being objective in today's world where there's such polarization of viewpoints, how do we really sort of get to the heart of being as unbiased as possible within our work? And truly the premier place to do that is the RAND Corporation. So here as an anthropologist where we do systems analysis, complex and dynamic systems analysis, I have the pleasure of being able to think through the human dimensions of what happens in policy development and enactment.
You co-authored a RAND study titled Speed and Security, Promises, Perils, and Paradoxes of the Accelerating Everything. Explain the premise of the study.
Sure, would love to. So one of the aspects of RAND, or one of its sort of fortes throughout its over 70 years, and in particular the RAND Center for Global Risk and Security, is thinking through gaming exercises and brainstorming exercises that are futuristic in scope. So really in part to help us as a society and help our policymakers think through what those challenges are so as to, in many ways, avoid being blindsided by things like emerging technologies or other sort of threats and risks. So the RAND Center for Global Risk and Security started this really incredible initiative called Security 2040. So 2040 is kind of an arbitrary date in the future, but it's one that gets us out of the headspace of here and now and thinking ahead, maybe not for the next administration, maybe the administrations after that, for how we can start to envision what the future could look like and start planning now and get multiple stakeholders involved. So not only our civil servants and policymakers, but also community leaders and really sort of forge that dialogue. So under a whole suite of projects, we wanted to look at this question of technologies of speed. I think if there's one thing that we can get people to agree on around the country, if not the world, it's that life feels like it's getting faster. So what are we to make of it? And what are we to make of these emerging technologies that are absolutely unprecedented in their ability to accelerate multiple processes from, say, high-level computing to transportation as they sort of come to the fore?
For most of the time humans have been around, the pace of change has been measured in centuries or decades. Now we're measuring in terms of product iterations and software versions. Are we wired for this degree of acceleration?
That's a great question. And it's one that as an anthropologist, I'm constantly thinking about this mismatch that we have between what our bodies are built for, so sort of the context in which humans became human, and the fact that our biology has not really kept in step with all of the social and cultural changes that have been happening all around the world. But there's so much of modernity that we can think of that's been sort of a constant march of acceleration, right? I mean, and a separation over time and space. So people have been sort of heralding their fears and concerns surrounding acceleration throughout the ages, right? I mean, look no further than, say, the Luddites, right? But I think what we're seeing now, and this was actually a theory that RAND started to develop in the early 90s, is that we're seeing sort of the traditional market structure hierarchies where we have more predictable flows of products and information and people and goods, sort of giving way to a networked-based society where we have these loose ties of products, information, and people and goods that are less predictable, right? So there's these more powerful technologies that are more condensed, they're more easily accessible, We've got people moving at unprecedented rates all around the world. And so in some ways, there's sort of a carryover from what we've seen in terms of all of the existing challenges that we knew about going faster. And now we have to ask ourselves if we're embarking into an age of sort of hyper acceleration where we've got emerging players, non-state actors, let's say, who can really change the game of not only global risk and security, but our daily lives.
So let's talk about that. In fact, one theme, as you mentioned, throughout the different technology and speed scenarios is the importance of security. Talk about how security must manifest itself and its importance in the acceleration world.
Well, so I'll speak to this as an anthropologist. So again, I said that I really like to target the human dimension of this and the cultural aspects of this. And so one of the things that we urged within the speed and security work that we did was in part just to start the conversation about it. So I think so often, especially in today's world, we can get lost in the tweet of the minute. There's so much information and misinformation and disinformation coming at us all the time. So it can be really hard to think about technology in the long game, right? Or take the long game approach to future planning for emerging technologies. So in part it was to sort of spur action on that end. And then on another, what we did was we developed these scenarios of average people living with faster technologies in that arbitrary year of 2040. And we hit the road and we started in New York City. So there's that cultural value of time where you can think about the New York Minute. And then we went from the New York Minute down to the Big Easy, right? New Orleans, where there's obviously a very different emphasis on time and speed and culture and ritual. And then we went over to Silicon Valley, so tech mecca, where speed is absolutely the bottom line. That is the game. And if you fall behind, that's an existential threat to your business, if you will, if not your community. And we asked thought leaders, community leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, a whole range of folks to weigh in on these future scenarios. What were some of the concerns that they might have? And what we found was that there's really a range of responses that people take when it comes to thinking through what life could be like if it were to accelerate even more than it has today. And some folks are really skeptical in regard to whether or not these technologies could even emerge. Some were highly confident, saying that it absolutely has to be this way, and it's more of a question of infrastructural changes that need to occur in order to enact these faster technologies. Some sort of fell in the middle, where let's take the Hyperloop, for example. Some said that great to have the Hyperloop, what an incredible feat of science and technology, but can we design it so that there's equitable access, so that it's not so prohibitively expensive that it's something that can only be used by the elite, right? How do we, in other words, think about how technologies of speed can be used to sort of mitigate the existing societal rifts that we're seeing, as opposed to exacerbate them? So I think that being able to think through, again, the human and the social and cultural dimensions of faster technologies of speed as they sort of come down the pike is really worth considering.
The study identified 4 scenarios of speed in 2040. Our audience can download the study and see them all, on their own, but I'd like to offer up at least one as a preview. What are the advantages of the sharing economy you envision for 2040, and what might we have to sacrifice to enjoy those?
That's a great question. So imagine if we lived in a world where everything that we have right now with Amazon Prime and Amazon Prime Now. So certain cities have Amazon Prime Now, where you can have just about anything you need delivered to your door within a couple of hours. Let's say we were able to leverage additive manufacturing to print whatever we might need in an even faster time span. So you could think about it of that sort of instantaneous access and the convenience, if not only convenience, but also the life-saving aspects that could be leveraged as a result of something like additive manufacturing as one particular technology within that. Other aspects of the sharing economy, of course, would be upending what we would traditionally have in terms of the housing market. So if we have hallmark of adulthood as being a homeowner, a car owner, all these other things, or having a stable job as opposed to working the gig economy. All of those processes we can already see are being essentially upended. They're shifting pretty rapidly. I think what struck people's imagination on that one was what it might do for a sense of community. So what does it mean if you no longer have to rely on sort of reciprocity with your neighbors in order to get a particular grocery that you might need and you can't access right away? Or what would it mean for civic engagement if, say, you live in Los Angeles, but you commute to San Francisco? We can already sort of see flickers of this, but where do you sort of feel that sense of community? Where do you give back to your community? I think that those were some potential trade-offs that are worth thinking through. And then again, I think from a policy standpoint, how do we think about sort of all the services that our particular areas of governance offer, and to think through how, if we've got sort of these loose flows of people and products, what that might mean in terms of investments in a community, and how to sort of leverage that collective power that I think is in part what makes America great.
Great answer. Dr. Kathryn Casey Bouskill, anthropologist at the RAND Corporation and associate director at the RAND Center for Global Risk and Security. If somebody wants to connect with you, Kathryn, maybe they want to get a copy of the study or just find out more about your speaking engagements and the work that you do, how can they do that?
Sure, you can find me at RAND, that's RAND.org, or you can find me on Twitter at KE Bouskill.
Sounds good. Thanks again for your time. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here or go to tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.